Just days before the World Cup final, Spain and Argentina are pushing back against FIFA over one controversial change. A halftime break that could stretch to nearly 30 minutes has sparked outrage, and it's now raising talk of a boycott. Let me break it down. Here's the number that's been bouncing around for days: 30 minutes. That's how long halftime at the World Cup final could run, according to broadcasters bracing for the break. The BBC and ITV are bracing themselves for a 30-minute break to accommodate an 11-minute halftime show along with their usual 15-minute mid-game analysis. 11 minutes of Madonna, Shakira, Justin Bieber, and BTS, wrapped inside a break nearly double the normal length. To put that in perspective, the laws of the game prohibit the interval of any football match lasting more than 15 minutes. That's not a guideline. That's the rule every single game at this World Cup has been played under for a month, except this one. And it's not even the first time FIFA has bent that rule this year. FIFA has already flouted the 15-minute limit at last year's Club World Cup, with one that stretched to 25 minutes. So when people say FIFA is repeating a pattern, they're not exaggerating. They did it once already, and now they're doing it bigger, on the biggest stage football has. Why? The governing body wants to create a World Cup final halftime show to rival the one the Super Bowl has long been renowned for. And broadcasters are expecting it to last even longer than 30 minutes. That's the ambition, not a football halftime, a Super Bowl halftime, dropped into the middle of a World Cup final. Now think about who actually has to play through that. Spain and Argentina aren't watching this halftime show from a couch. They're the ones getting pulled off the pitch mid-battle, sent to a locker room, and told to sit tight while Coldplay's Chris Martin runs a full-scale concert on the same turf they were just sprinting on. It could make this the lengthiest edition of football's flagship fixture ever played. And it's not just the halftime interval that's ballooned this tournament. Each half already features 3-minute hydration breaks, which many suspect are a Trojan horse for additional adverts. So players from both finalists have already spent the tournament adjusting to stoppages that didn't used to exist. Now they're being told the biggest stoppage of all is coming on the biggest night of their careers. One columnist covering the tournament didn't hold back describing what this turns the match into. Suddenly, it is a game divided into 4 quarters instead of 2 halves, with the abomination of a half-hour Super Bowl-style interval sprung on fans for Sunday's World Cup final, as FIFA appears to be on a mission to Americanize football into soccer. To change it forever, strong words. But they capture exactly what's got people on edge heading into Sunday. This isn't a normal final anymore, it's something else wearing a final shirt. And the frustration isn't just about entertainment overreach. It's about what happens to the players' bodies. There's little regard for how much hanging around the players are now doing, the effect that's having on the possibility of injuries, especially muscular issues, and the need to keep warming up with no consideration for player welfare. And it's not healthy for them to be inactive for so long. That's not a fan complaint. That's a description of what standing cold for 30 minutes actually does to a footballer's legs, right before the most important 90 minutes of the year. Stack the 2 breaks together, and you get a night that could run long past its natural finish. Extra time and a penalty shootout would take it beyond 11 p.m. 3 hours from the start, and getting close to how long the actual Super Bowl goes on for. Except, as that same columnist pointed out, American football was built for that structure. Except American football has always been divided into 4 quarters and has a whole different structure. Football wasn't built that way, not until this year. So picture it from the inside. Spain and Argentina spend 90 minutes of knockout football clawing for a World Cup. Then right when the game is at its most delicate, 1 goal up, 1 goal down. Legs already heavy, everyone gets sent away for half an hour, while a full concert happens on the pitch they just played on. Then they're expected to come back out, rewarm, refocus, and finish the job like nothing happened. That's the setup Spain and Argentina walked into this week. Not a footnote, not a side story. The exact break structure of the biggest match of their careers got rewritten, and neither team had a say in it. It's worth remembering, too, why this whole thing exists in the first place. FIFA president Gianni Infantino has been open about the scale of his ambition for this tournament. The push to build a halftime show to rival the Super Bowl comes on the back of Infantino stating his dream for this World Cup to be 104 Super Bowls. 104 Super Bowls. That's the comparison being made for a tournament that used to measure itself in goals, not concerts. And that ambition runs straight into the one thing football has always protected without exception: the clock. It doesn't quite make sense on paper. That's what the Super Bowl does, and it's a one-off event built for exactly that kind of spectacle. A World Cup final only happens once every 4 years too, but it's still a football match first. That's the tension sitting right at the center of Sunday. So before a ball's even kicked, Spain and Argentina are heading into a final where the rulebook itself has been quietly rewritten around them. And as we're about to get into, this isn't the first time football's power brokers have tried to stretch halftime past its limit. And it's not the first time it's blown up in their faces either. To understand how Spain and Argentina ended up here, you have to go back further than this tournament. This fight over halftime length didn't start this month. It's been simmering for years. Back in 2021, football's own rulemakers were asked to make exactly this change official. The sport's lawmaking body, the International Football Association Board, rejected a 2021 proposal from the South American Confederation, CONMEBOL, for the maximum length of halftime to be extended to 25 minutes. CONMEBOL, the confederation Argentina plays under. They were the ones who first pushed for a longer break, years before anyone was talking about Madonna or Coldplay. And IFAB didn't reject it quietly. They gave a specific reason, one that's now hanging over Sunday's match like a warning label nobody read. The IFAB cited the negative impact on player welfare and safety, resulting from a longer period of inactivity. That's the official, on-the-record reasoning football's own lawmakers gave for saying no to this exact idea. Longer breaks hurt player bodies, full stop, that was the ruling. So when FIFA turned around this year and built an 11-minute concert into the World Cup final anyway, it wasn't just bending a scheduling rule. It was overriding a safety decision that football's own governing body had already made in writing 4 years earlier. It gets messier. CONMEBOL didn't just get told no and walk away quietly, they went ahead and tested it anyway on their own turf. Despite the rejection, CONMEBOL staged a Shakira concert lasting that long, during the 2024 Copa America final in Miami. Same city cluster, basically the same stadium footprint. A full-length concert crammed into a halftime interval, and it happened at a CONMEBOL final. Argentina's own confederation, doing exactly what IFAB told them not to do 3 summers ago. And it backfired almost immediately. That led to a complaint from Colombia head coach Nestor Lorenzo, who had been sanctioned at the same tournament for his team returning from halftime 1 minute late. Sit with that for a second. A coach gets punished for being 60 seconds late back to the pitch. The same tournament, the same competition, turns around and stretches its own halftime interval to a full concert length. One rule for the teams, a different one apparently for the entertainment schedule. That's not a hypothetical worry anymore. That's a documented case from Argentina and Colombia's own region of exactly the scenario Spain and Argentina are being asked to walk into on Sunday. A stretched interval that punishes players for the very inactivity organizers created. Meanwhile, on the FIFA side, the ambition for Sunday kept growing. The FIFA World Cup 2026 final halftime show is a first for a halftime show at a World Cup. Curated by Coldplay's Chris Martin, headlined by Madonna, Shakira, BTS, and Justin Bieber, with characters from the Muppets also featured. It's not one performer stepping out for a song. It's a full production, headliners, choreography, a production team. And the machinery behind it isn't small either. The show is being produced by Global Citizen in partnership with Live Nation and Done Plus Dusted. These are the same companies that run World Tour and Super Bowl halftime shows. That's the level of production being dropped into the middle of a 90-minute football match, with Spain and Argentina standing in the wings waiting to come back out. Even the surrounding ceremony got bigger than any previous World Cup. The ceremony takes place before the final, with FIFA saying it begins 90 minutes ahead of kickoff. So players are looking at 90 minutes of pre-match ceremony, 90 minutes of first-half football, a halftime interval that could hit 30 minutes, then a second half. And that's before anyone even mentions extra time. FIFA has defended the scale of it, framing the whole night as something bigger than a football match. Officials involved in staging the show have pushed back on the idea that it's excessive, insisting the production has been planned around the game rather than against it. But the pushback from the football side of the sport hasn't gone away, and it's coming from people whose entire job is protecting the players stuck in the middle of it. That's the FIFPRO angle, the players' own global union. And it's been building concern about exactly this kind of scheduling pressure for over a year now, well before anyone had heard the words 11-minute halftime show. Global Players Union FIFPRO has been exploring whether extending halftime to 20 minutes and introducing more frequent cooling breaks could better protect players from extreme heat. Notice the number there, 20 minutes. That was FIFPRO's own proposed ceiling, built around player safety in hot conditions. And it's still 10 minutes shorter than what broadcasters are now bracing for on Sunday. FIFPRO's medical director has been blunt about where the line sits. Vincent Gaudabarge, FIFPRO's medical director, questioned whether the traditional 15-minute halftime interval is sufficient when matches are played in extreme heat, saying you can imagine that halftime of 15 minutes might not be enough to decrease the core temperature. He was arguing for more time to protect bodies from heat, not more time to fit in a concert. Those are two completely different reasons to stretch the clock, and only one of them has anything to do with keeping Spain and Argentina's players safe. Even FIFPRO's policy director flagged the tension between money and player health directly. Alexander Bielefeld, FIFPRO's Director of Policy and Strategic Relations, said this isn't just affecting one tournament but future tournaments as well, adding that there needs to be a better balance between commercial interests and the health and safety of players. That's the players' own union on the record, naming the exact conflict sitting underneath Sunday's halftime plan. So by the time Spain and Argentina booked their spots in the final, the halftime fight wasn't some fresh controversy invented for this one match. It was a fight that had already gone through CONMEBOL, through IFAB, through FIFPRO, and through a Copa America final where a coach got sanctioned for being a minute late, while the entertainment ran on for 25. Spain and Argentina simply walked into the middle of it at the worst possible moment. The final itself. While FIFA was building its concert, the people responsible for actually showing the match to the world were quietly panicking behind the scenes. And their panic tells you just how unusual this halftime plan really is. Start with the UK. Gripes with the halftime show centered on the fact it would exceed the standard 15-minute limit, with this weekend's show expected to take between 25 and 30 minutes including setup and strike. And up until recently, multiple sources had reported that the UK's official broadcasters, ITV and the BBC, would not show the halftime performance at all, instead sticking to the usual mid-game analysis from their pundits. Read that again, two of the biggest broadcasters covering the final seriously considered simply not airing FIFA's own halftime show. That's how uncomfortable this got before a ball was even kicked in the final. That reluctance wasn't just about taste, it came from a real scheduling headache. The BBC and ITV are bracing themselves for a 30-minute break to accommodate an 11-minute halftime show, along with their usual 15-minute mid-game analysis. Two different jobs, entertainment and analysis, crammed into one bloated window, with broadcasters left figuring out how to serve both without losing viewers to one or the other. And this is where Spain and Argentina's own football cultures come into the picture directly. British commentary has leaned hard into treating this as an imported American concept, being forced onto a European and South American game. FIFA appears to be on a mission to Americanize football into soccer, doing so with no regard to the players or the fans or what the game means. Spain built its footballing identity on tiki-taka rhythm and control. Argentina built its identity on grit, resilience, and Messi-era magic. Neither nation's football culture has anything to do with concert intermissions, and now both are being asked to adapt their biggest possible night around one. The frustration extends past the broadcasters into the wider football media covering the build-up. One outlet flatly called FIFA's plan an abomination, tying it directly to the sense that football's identity was being reshaped without consultation. Suddenly, it is a game divided into 4 quarters instead of 2 halves. With the abomination of a half-hour, Super Bowl-style interval sprung on us for Sunday's World Cup final. That word, abomination, isn't casual criticism. It's the kind of language usually reserved for genuine rule violations, not marketing decisions. Even the hydration breaks that have quietly become part of every match this tournament get swept into the same suspicion. Each half already features 3-minute hydration breaks, which many suspect are a Trojan horse for additional adverts. So the pattern critics are pointing to isn't just Sunday's halftime show in isolation. It's a full tournament's worth of extra stoppages, each one justified by player welfare, each one also conveniently lining up with commercial breaks. Fans have noticed too, and they haven't stayed quiet about it. Fans have made their feelings known by booing the hydration breaks, drowned out by music. That's happened during actual matches Spain and Argentina have played in this tournament. Their own supporters in their own stadiums, voicing exactly the kind of frustration. That's now bubbling up around Sunday's much bigger interruption. FIFA, for its part, has framed the whole spectacle as something bigger than football alone. Infantino described Sunday's show in grand terms, tying it to legacy and shared values rather than simply entertainment. As the world unites for the most significant football match in history, this groundbreaking spectacle, curated by Chris Martin of Coldplay, will celebrate football, music, and shared values, ensuring a legacy that transcends the final whistle. Infantino announced, "That's the pitch." A legacy moment, not just a game, but that framing hasn't landed well with critics, who think the emphasis has drifted away from what actually matters on the pitch. Critics have pushed back on that framing directly, arguing the headliners are, and always should be, out on the pitch wearing shirts, shorts, socks, and football boots, and kicking a ball with the aim of scoring a goal. That is it, that is all that matters. It's a blunt rebuttal, and it cuts right to what's bothering people about Sunday. The two teams who fought through a month of football to get here are being treated as the undercard to a concert. There's also a financial layer critics keep circling back to, tying the halftime decision to FIFA's wider tournament expansion under Infantino. The push for a halftime show to rival the Super Bowl comes on the back of Infantino, stating his dream for this World Cup to be 104 Super Bowls, 104. That's the scale of ambition being talked about, and Spain and Argentina's final is the test case for whether that ambition can actually be delivered without the football itself getting squeezed out of its own showcase. By midweek, the broadcaster standoff had become one of the most talked about subplots of the entire build-up, bigger in some circles than the tactical matchup between the two finalists themselves. That's an unusual place for a World Cup final to find itself, with more airtime spent debating the interval than the actual football expected either side of it. Strip away the broadcasters and the concert lineup, and what you're left with is the part that actually matters to the two teams stepping onto the pitch Sunday. What 30 minutes of standing around does to a footballer's body in the biggest match of his life. Football's own lawmakers have already answered that question years before this final was ever scheduled. The laws of the game, governed by IFAB, state that players are entitled to a break not exceeding 15 minutes, in part because of player welfare concerns. That's not a rule about pace of play or television scheduling. That's a rule built specifically around keeping players' bodies safe. And when CONMEBOL tried to challenge that exact rule, IFAB's rejection came with a very specific medical warning attached. In 2021, IFAB rejected calls to extend the halftime break to 25 minutes, citing potential negative impact on player welfare and safety resulting from a longer period of inactivity. That's the same confederation Argentina competes under, told directly by football's rulemakers that this exact idea, the one being tested on their World Cup final, carries safety risk. The physiology behind that warning isn't abstract either. Once a footballer's muscles cool down past a certain point, getting back to match intensity takes real time and carries real risk. When the breaks usually exceed 20 minutes, the athletes lose momentum and need to warm up again. 20 minutes. Sunday's break is projected to run 10 minutes past that threshold minimum. That's exactly the injury pattern critics have been pointing to all week when describing what a half-hour interval does to players. Stuck in the middle of it, there's little regard for how much hanging around players are now doing. The effect that's having on the possibility for injuries, especially muscular issues, and the need to keep warming up. With no consideration for player welfare, and it's not healthy for them to be inactive for so long. Muscular injuries. Hamstrings, calves, the kind of soft tissue damage that comes from asking a body to go from a dead stop back to full sprint. With no proper build-up, now put Spain and Argentina's players inside that scenario specifically. These are two squads that have already played deep into the tournament, carrying accumulated fatigue from a month of knockout football. Defending champion Argentina came from behind for a 2-1 victory over England in the semi-final, to advance to the title game against Spain, with Spain having triumphed in 2010, and Argentina defending the title they won in 2022. Both squads are running on fumes by the final. Adding 30 minutes of cold sitting in the middle of that particular physical state is a very different risk than doing it in an early group game. It's not just a generic football complaint either. It's one FIFPRO has been raising directly, tournament after tournament. Specifically about this event, extreme heat faced by soccer players at the Club World Cup in the United States will likely be an even bigger problem at the next two Men's World Cups, their global union FIFPRO warned. Heat and inactivity compound each other. Standing still for half an hour in a hot, humid New Jersey summer evening isn't neutral for a player's body, it actively works against it. FIFPRO's own suggested fix, notably, was nowhere near what Sunday's interval will actually run. FIFPRO said extra heat mitigation measures could include 20-minute halftime breaks instead of 15, to help lower players' core temperatures, and cooling breaks in play every 15 minutes. 20 minutes built entirely around cooling players down safely, not 30 built around fitting in 5 headline musical acts. And FIFPRO's tone on this hasn't been purely combative. They've acknowledged FIFA has made some improvements along the way, which makes the halftime gap stand out even more as an unresolved piece. FIFPRO's General Secretary said they are partially happy, because FIFA have been quite responsive once the tournament was underway. Partially happy, not fully. And halftime length is exactly the piece still sitting unresolved when Sunday arrives. There's a deeper worry FIFPRO has flagged too, one that goes beyond the single final and into the sport's near future. The 2030 World Cup will be co-hosted by Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, where fewer stadiums are enclosed and cooled. And temperatures in some host cities are already at or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Spain, one of Sunday's 2 finalists, is set to co-host the very next World Cup. In conditions FIFPRO already considers riskier for exactly this kind of extended break. Whatever gets normalized on Sunday doesn't stay contained to one match. It becomes the template Spain inherits 4 years from now on its own soil. FIFPRO's medical director put the stakes in plain terms when describing what extended inactivity does physiologically, tying it directly to the tournament's broader heat concerns. The past few weeks was also a confirmation of our worry that the heat condition would play a negative role for the performance and health of the players, Gaudebarge said. That's not a hypothetical, that's a union tracking real data across a real tournament, and watching the warning signs pile up in real time. So when people talk about Spain and Argentina bristling at Sunday's halftime plan, this is the substance underneath it. It's not about disliking Madonna or Shakira. It's about 2 exhausted squads being told to stand cold for half an hour, in heat their own players' union has already flagged as extreme, right before the most physically demanding 90 minutes of their year. That's the part that turns a scheduling dispute into something both dressing rooms actually feel in their legs. By the time kickoff approached, none of the tension had actually been resolved. The rule was still bent, the break was still scheduled to run close to half an hour. And Spain and Argentina still had to play through it, whatever noise had built up around it during the week. FIFA didn't back down from the spectacle. If anything, the lineup only grew as Sunday got closer. Emmanuel Kelly, the Australian singer-songwriter who made history as the first differently abled artist to headline a FIFA halftime show, joined stars including Justin Bieber, Madonna, Shakira, and BTS. More names, more production, more reasons for the interval to stretch rather than shrink. The broadcasters who'd wavered over whether to even show the segment eventually made their call, one way or another. And the match went ahead exactly as scheduled. Kickoff, first half, the long interval. Second half, and whatever came after that. Fox began coverage with its pregame show at 1 p.m. ET, with kickoff scheduled for 3 p.m. ET. No delay, no walkout, no formal refusal from either camp. Both sets of players came out for the anthem, played the first half, and then found out in real time exactly what standing through that halftime interval felt like in their legs when the second half started. That's the part worth sitting with, all the friction, CONMEBOL's old fight with IFAB, the Copa America precedent with Lorenzo's complaint, FIFPRO's repeated warnings about heat and inactivity. Broadcasters threatening to cut away never actually stopped the show from happening. It built pressure, it built noise. It didn't build a boycott, and by full time the football press was already asking the follow-up question everyone saw coming. What does FIFA do with this halftime format at the next one? Because Spain, remember, isn't just walking away from Sunday as a competitor in this final. Spain co-hosts the 2030 World Cup alongside Portugal and Morocco, in conditions FIFPRO already considers riskier. For this kind of format, whatever gets normalized in New Jersey doesn't stay in New Jersey. It becomes the starting point for the conversation Spain's own football federation will have to have in 4 years, on their own ground, with their own players. And Argentina leaves Sunday carrying the other half of that same unfinished argument. The confederation that first asked for a longer break back in 2021, then tested it themselves at a Copa America final, then watched a coach get sanctioned for being a minute late to the very interval they'd stretched. CONMEBOL's original proposal for a 25-minute halftime was rejected by IFAB. Yet CONMEBOL staged a full-length concert at the 2024 Copa America final anyway, leading to a complaint from Colombia's head coach after he'd been sanctioned earlier in the same tournament for a 1-minute late return. That contradiction never got resolved. It just followed Argentina all the way to Sunday's final. So the resistance was real. It showed up in broadcaster boardrooms, in IFAB's own rulebook, in FIFPRO's medical warnings, in a Copa America final 2 summers earlier. What it didn't do was stop kickoff or stop halftime, or stop the concert from going ahead exactly as Chris Martin and Global Citizen had built it. Spain and Argentina played through all 30 minutes of it, same as everyone watching from home. What happens next is the part still unwritten. FIFPRO has already said this fight isn't contained to one match. It's about the next 2 World Cups, plural. Spain hosts one of them. Whatever gets decided about halftime length between now and 2030 will trace directly back to what both these teams' bodies went through. On this one Sunday night in New Jersey, standing on cold legs, waiting for a concert to end so a football match could finish. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content. Sources: FIFA to break rules with 30-minute halftime show at World Cup final AOL. FIFA World Cup final. FIFA plans 30-minute halftime show to rival Super Bowl NZ Herald. How to watch Argentina-Spain final. Closing ceremony of World Cup 2026 deadline. How to watch Argentina vs. Spain and World Cup final. Yahoo Sports. Justin Bieber, Shakira, Madonna and BTS. What to expect at the World Cup final halftime show. Yahoo. Why everyone hates the FIFA World Cup halftime show. Dazed. FIFA breaks major rule for World Cup finals for the first time in history. Yahoo Sports. FIFPro, longer halftime, more breaks needed at 2026 World Cup to combat heat. The Score. FIFPRO consider 20-minute halftimes, more cooling breaks to combat serious heat. Flash Score USA. Emmanuel Kelly announced for FIFA World Cup 2026 final halftime show. London Post. Scaloni overcome with emotion after reaching the final. BN Sports. List of 2026 FIFA World Cup controversies. Wikipedia.